What's going on, everyone? This week is a big one for us because for the first time ever, we're here at the Michigan SWAT Conference. And I'll be honest with you, this one has been on our radar for a pretty long time. Michigan just has a reputation for producing squared away teams. They have a strong training culture and officers who just take this job seriously. So being out here to teach is absolutely an honor. And we're bringing two of our heaviest hitting courses, our high threat medical and our canine medical operations courses. And don't be mistaken for a second. These aren't PowerPoint classroom only concept classes. And over the next few days, we're going to push and challenge and sharpen the officers who signed up and elected to have this put on them because, quite frankly, that's what they deserve and that's what the mission demands. So I want to take you behind the scenes and show you what we're doing here in Michigan. And for us as vendors and instructors, this is where we get to connect with the teams before and after the class. We get to hear what they're running into back home, what's working for them, what's not, and the gaps that they're trying to close. That feedback that really shapes the training just as much as the curriculum does. So while the training days, the skills are getting sharpened, the trade show is where the profession evolves. This is where innovation meets experience. It's where the next generation of tools gets chosen. And this is really where the community comes together to push this whole standard forward. So what you're watching here is the kind of training that we feel separates teams who hope they're ready from teams who know they're ready. Here at the Michigan SWAT Conference, we're instructing and then running officers through live fire tactical medical scenarios that force them to think and move and communicate and treat under the same stresses that they'll face on real operations. This isn't classroom medicine. This isn't controlled or quiet or comfortable, and that's intentional. This is the environment where real decisions get made, and the goal is simple: build operators who can perform when everything around them is falling apart. And the whole purpose of this is that this live fire medical training, it exposes officers to the physiological and cognitive stressors that come with real gunfights. Things like elevated heart rate and tunnel vision and auditory exclusion and cognitive overload. And then right in the middle of all that, they have to treat a casualty. And that transition from shooter to medic to communicator is where most teams struggle. So we build reps, and in turn, we're building confidence, and we're building that ability to make the rapid decisions. Now, the role of comms in all of this, as you watch this footage,
953,
not so much the shooting and not the treating, but if you could actually hear, and I know you can't, but if you could hear the talking, communication is the only thing that keeps a tactical medical problem from turning into a collection of just individual reactions. When comms break down, you don't just lose efficiency, you lose accountability, you lose your tempo, and you lose the ability to protect the casualty. And it takes a lot of discipline and practice to narrate the world around you, and especially when it's suddenly gone to hell. These aren't just status updates. They're coordination tools. They're how a team maintains shared awareness under stress. Without that shared picture that they're creating, every operator just kind of becomes their own little universe. And that's where people get hurt. And that's where things really start to spiral. Now, here's the real priority: stabilizing the environment, not the patient. When something goes wrong, most people instinctively just want to go hands-on with the casualty immediately. And we exploit that as instructors because we know that that instinct is human, but it's wrong. The first medical intervention is environmental control. You can't treat in a space that you don't own, and you can't save a life when you're still taking fire or you're still exposed. And if you find yourself in a situation like this, whether it's part of a professional team or even as someone just out with their family and gets caught up in some sort of active assailant incident, you're going to have to fight for angles, push to cover, and buy yourself seconds. And those seconds are the difference between a rushed, sloppy intervention and a deliberate, survivable one. time and space. They aren't luxuries in these situations. They really become part of the medicine. And then right from there, we need to make this transition from being a gunfighter to a problem solver. And this is where most people, and teams for that matter, really struggled. The transition, it isn't just physical. I'm always harping on this. This is truly cognitive. The officer closest to the casualty usually becomes the medic by default. And that role shift has to be instant. There can't be any hesitation. There can't be any confusion about it. And if you're watching this, and just like we saw as we're doing all this training, that closest officer, they're going to call it out, the injury. They're going to call out what they're doing, and they want to call for what they need. And we practice doing radio reports, just, getting reps in on acting and calling out for those things, and doing all of that lets the rest of the element maintain security, and they do so without ever turning around. So good transitions can keep the fight stable, but bad transitions really create blind spots. And then right from there, now we're going into your hemorrhage control. And that has to just be, there's got to be a lot of speed there, but it can't be out of panic, because the one thing that we see that always bothers me a lot is, tourniquets in training, they always look easy. In real time, under stress, with gear, all that stuff gets in the way. You're getting sweat in your eyes, and it really becomes a fight to do what looks like a really simple task. And what matters in those moments is decisiveness. If you're throwing a tourniquet on in a situation like this, put it on high and tight, lock it down, and then communicate it. And then from there, we go into this airway and breathing stuff and doing micro assessments in a macro chaos environment. The airway and breathing checks in a tactical environment, they're not textbook. They're quick, brutal, and focused. Watch the hands of the officers here doing the assessments. You need to be checking for chest rise and looking and feeling for any penetrating trauma, sealing wounds that need to be sealed, and then calling it out as you go. And speaking of as you go, now we get into casualty movement. And this is where teams really either shine or they fall apart, because this is pretty much going to conclude your direct and indirect threat care that we provide if the situation allows for it. But this is the part that students underestimate. Moving a casualty in kit is a full body event. Doing it while maintaining security is a mental event, and doing all of that while communicating really becomes a team event. Without that coordination, you get gaps and then you get exposed. So really the takeaway with all of this is none of this is purely about tactics or medicine. It's really about thinking. And what you're seeing in looking at this video footage, none of this, I'm not trying to portray any sort of perfect technique. It's not supposed to be. What you're seeing is real decision making under pressure. You're seeing officers from all over Michigan, and we had officers from the Detroit Police Department, the Northern Michigan Emergency Response Team, and several other different county sheriff's departments, all who can now shoot, treat, communicate, and adapt without freezing. And that's the standard, not perfection, but composure, not flawless execution, but disciplined problem solving. And that's what this channel, that's why this channel focuses on the full spectrum, the comms, the medicine, the tactical decision making. We treat all of it as if it were all one system, because whether you're building professional capability or just personal preparedness, improving that entire ecosystem is, quite honestly, Rant's whole mission. So drop your thoughts and your questions in the comments, and we'll break them down. And with that, as always, we'll be headed to Ohio next week, so we'll see you on the next one. Stay safe.